Shepard Commander, it is recommended that we recruit Mike the Birdman for their superior geek knowledge. This would increase our chances of success against the old machines. The Gath consensus has infiltrated ThisWeekInGeek.net, and we find it adequate for our needs.
Who disrupts my coronation? Everyone has been destroyed because of this freak. I won't allow it! These babies just saved this lame fest party!
What's going on? You are listening to ThisWeekInGeek.net. I'm your host, Mike the Birdman, and well, I'm probably off healing up from surgery right now, so I'm probably playing Mass Effect, or I'm probably exploring the worlds of, I don't know, Star Wars. Maybe I'm being Spider-Man. Either way, I'm in the world of the fantastic, but that always means there's an era of science to what I do. And if you guys follow my Twitter, which is @Birdman, I'm always retweeting science articles. I'm always talking about it on the This Week in Geek podcast. So recently, this kind of came to my attention. We have a local podcast here in town called The Breezy Breakfast Bullhorn, and they had a guest on there recently who was talking about establishing potentially a Guelph Science Center, and that idea intrigued me immensely. I've been a big fan of the Ontario Science Center. I've been to the one up in Ottawa. I've been to the one in Sudbury. You might say I'm a bit of a science nut. I've had some scientists on this program before, from people from paranormal psychology like ghost hunters and ufologists, but I've also had people involved in biology. I've had chemists, and I've had astronomers too. So what I happened to do is I reached out to one of the co-founders of Royal City Science, and I'm talking with Joanne O'Meara. She is a physics professor at the University of Guelph, but she has a unbelievable scientific background, which I think is really, really cool. And it's not just because she's smart, cool, and all these other things. She makes it accessible to children, which means it's more accessible to the every person. And that means getting people more interested in things like STEAM, which is science, technology, education, arts, and mathematics. I think I spelled that right. So without any further ado, I want to welcome Joanne to the show.
Hi, Mike. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, it is really exciting to talk with you. As I said during my intro, I'm a huge proponent of learning. Never stop learning, no matter how old you are. And I think it's important to engage young minds to really explore the world around them. I mean, I remember the first science book I ever picked up was a book about astronomy, and it was a book about Venus and Pluto. And that really got me thinking. And I used to watch National Geographic documentaries on my own. I used to watch the Discovery Channel, and I never wanted to stop learning. So inviting you here and discovering that you co-founded this organization locally, which wants to bring a science center to Guelph, got me tremendously interested. So can you tell me a little bit about Royal City Science?
For sure. So I've been teaching at the University of Guelph for almost 20 years now. And before that, I've been at a few other places. And for more than 20 years, I've been very passionate about doing community outreach. So taking what we are learning in the cutting edge research and taking it out to the community. So we've been doing that for years. And I was talking with a colleague of mine, my fellow co-founder, the great Orbax, and we were talking about, the various events that we've been doing lately. And we just kind of got talking about, we have an art gallery, we have a performing arts center, we have an amazing sports arena. Why don't we have a science center in this amazing city of ours? And because we kind of think this way, we're like, well, come on, it can't be that hard. Let's figure out how to make this happen. So that was in early 2020. Like January, February of 2020, we started to have a few meetings. It was starting to snowball super quickly. And then there was a pandemic. So we kept the momentum going as best we could. We officially launched as an incorporated nonprofit organization in the fall of 2020. Our launch was in November, and since then we've been running programming, and we've had interactions with more than 13,000 community members over that, little over a year and a half now.
So when you started doing these community kind of outreach programs, what does the programming kind of look like? Because I remember my science presentations in elementary school. Now I'm 40 years old, so I'm, old man Ashkowee here. So it looked a little bit different from when I was a child. It was very dry, very bland. But looking at some of the pictures on Royal City, and you even have some stuff up on YouTube, you take quite a different approach to making science a little bit more accessible and fun to the kids, as they say.
For sure. So 40 is in the rearview mirror for me, Mike. So you're not the young one here, or you're not the old one here. But yeah, it's in science communication. It's all about audience, right? It's audience. So your modality, your props, your analogies, everything that you do is dictated by who are you talking to. So for sure, we've done activities that look at the physics of flight, from the perspective of talking to Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. We've had events. We just had an event last week where I was giving a talk at Wellington Brewery on the physics of fizz. So all about bubbles, carbonated drinks, beer. Why is a bubble a sphere when you blow it in the air? What happens if you blow bubbles on a surface? What does that look like? We had people actually playing around with bubbles while we were there. So it's really all about the audience. And to me, it needs to be fun. It needs to be engaging. And you mentioned the Ontario Science Centre in your intro. I grew up in the West End of Toronto, and I would be like, the happiest possible thing for me would be to convince my parents to take me to the Science Center for the afternoon, because it was just such an engaging environment to play around and explore and try things and see what happens. And that's really what science is all about. So that's what we want for Guelph. We want something that we don't have to drive down the 401 to go and get that hands-on immersive experience and play around with stuff and see what happens.
I mean, I remember the first time I ever went to a science center. I mean, as a child, I remember going to museums, but there wasn't anything really interactive. I mean, sure, I saw a couple of really, really cool dinosaur skeletons, but never anything interactive. I didn't go to my first science center until I actually went on one of the first dates with my wife all the way back in 2007. And the first exhibit that I went to was a Marvel exhibit.
Wow.
And they showed, well, how does Iron Man suits work? And they had this thing where you put your hands in these hydraulic gauntlets and you literally lifted a car, which I thought was tremendously cool. Or they showed, well, how do Thor's powers work? And they were like, well, here's electricity and all that. And I remember one that was more focused towards adults, but it did have a lot of really kid-friendly stuff, was a Star Trek one. And they had people come out in costume and explain how does a phaser work, or how the principles of the idea work. And I got to thinking, so you ran something at the Mill Street Brewery pretty recently, as you just mentioned. And I remember this specifically because I thought it was so weird. What is meteorite beer?
Yeah, so it was actually Wellington Brewery at the north end of Guelph. And we, back in January, we went there and spent the day with them to brew a special beer. We call it Dark Matter Quantum Lager. And it is based on their very popular Helles Lager, but it has blackberry flavor. And has also been brewed with meteorite in the tank.
Okay, so what exactly is is that iridium, or what was that? Just tell me more. I'm
Right.
sorry.
So,
This sounds
so
cool.
my partner, the great Orbax, is my fellow co-founder, and he was tasked with sourcing the meteorite, and all he would tell me was, "I know a guy. Don't worry." So that's pretty much what I can tell you about the meteorite. But we do have an event coming up. So we have an event tonight. We have a series of events called Science on Tap. So last week was the first one where I talked about the physics of fizz, and we had somebody from Wellington talking about the brewing process and the science of brewing beer. And then tonight we have an event on heart. It's called Hearts on the Mind, and we have a leading cardiovascular researcher from the University of Guelph talking about sexism in cardiovascular research and how that has impacted women being diagnosed and treated for very serious conditions like heart attacks. We also have a speaker who is a heart donor recipient, and she's going to talk about her experience with that. So I'm really looking forward to that. We're going to have some trivia and some prizes and all kinds of fun stuff. Next week is our space night, and we have someone from the Planetary Society who is on our board of directors. Kate Howells is going to be speaking about the moons of our solar system. And we also have Dr. Glynis Perrette, who is on our advisory team. And she did her PhD at the University of Guelph working with the team who controls an instrument on one of the rovers on Mars. So she's going to be talking about, and her background is also partially geology. So she's going to be talking all about meteorites. What are they? How are they different from asteroids and all of these things? So that's on June 1st. And then the last one is going to be all about groundwater and sustainability. We're going to have somebody from UG Environmental Sciences and Engineering talking about that. And we also have someone from Wellington Brewery talking about what their practices are in order to try and brew as sustainably as possible, because water is a very important element in their brewing process, and how can they do it in a sustainable way. So that's the events that are happening right now. So if you are interested in meteorites and you want to hear more about the meteorite that went into our beer, I encourage you to check out our website, and you can come to the June 1st event if you're in the area.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's tremendously neat. Just the fact that you're covering everything from science of space. You're talking about body health, but you're also talking about more environmental things. So you're hitting all the big kind of categories, which is tremendously interesting to keep multiple levels of people engaged in the community. While science can be fun and kind of kitschy at times, it also deals with some really serious issues, which if we've looked at if anything, if the last 2 years has shown us anything, is, hey guys, science is real. You should probably listen to the guys that are smart. So it's
Yeah, absolutely.
it's always good to know that there are people in the community that are willing to reach out and educate, and not just because it's, that imperative to just share knowledge, but also to welcome new people into the fold, because I would never have associated a scientific discussion with a brewery. And that's more what pushed me to pursue this interview as well, because it's such a weird cross section. And as you mentioned with your communication course, by getting people to think about how they communicate to technical audiences,
Right.
what are some of the things that you've seen in your experiences teaching at the University of Guelph that have shown, what are some of the creative ideas that students are maybe thinking about to bring forward in their careers?
For sure. Yeah. So for the last several years, I've been teaching a course at the university called Science Communication, and we actually require it of our physics majors. A little while ago, we're looking at our program. What are we doing well? Where are some things that we could do a little better? And we spend a lot of time in our program teaching our students how to communicate very technically with their peers, with their, supervisors and that. But we didn't really have much in the way of helping them develop those important skills of communicating to non-technical audiences. So this course is designed for that specifically. They have assignments where they give little presentations to each other, like 3 minutes, explain some science concept in a non-technical way. They do a podcast assignment, they do a video assignment, and then at the end of the semester, they have a group project. And the last few years, we've been partnering with the Guelph Civic Museum and running STEM Week. And the students are given a budget. They're given cash to spend to actually buy equipment and build stuff. And they get to design a hands-on interactive experiment demonstration for visiting grade 6, 7, 8 students. And then we have students come through the Civic Museum for a week and play with all of these interactives that the students have done. And they've been super creative in some of the things they've come up with. Before we partnered with the Civic Museum, the group project was more open-ended. I had one group, you mentioned Marvel. I had one group a group of 4 young women who wrote, illustrated, sewed together, bound a book on the physics of superheroes, which I thought was so amazing and super creative. I had a group that had basically a business proposal of as what did they call it, STEM cubed, I think it was. And the idea was like science experiments in a box. It was like a subscription thing, and like once a month you would get a new set of equipment to do an experiment and all the instructions you needed. So they've been super creative, and it's been a lot of fun to see these students who, like, all their other courses are like quantum mechanics and thermodynamics and advanced calculus and differential equations, and to give them a course where they can play and like be creative and stretch different muscles. It's been so much fun to watch how they just run with it.
It's exciting to hear things like that, because like I think a lot of media, at least when I was growing up, portrayed scientists as these dorky individuals who didn't know to have fun. We always thought of the guy with the short hair and the pocket protector, your typical nerd. But I hear you talking about this, and I hear just that creativity that's coming through the new group of up and coming scientists. And that makes me really optimistic for the future. In fact, I'm really surprised no one has done the science cubed box in reality right now, actually.
Yeah, I for sure, science and physics in particular, my discipline, has had a serious image problem. And I mean, I may get in trouble here with Big Bang Theory fans, but that show really has not helped us in that perspective of what people think of when they think of a physicist, because now anybody just pictures Sheldon Cooper, and you have to be genius and you have to be weird and, all of the things that Sheldon is in his funny, quirky way. And it's actually, a serious issue for us in physics that people think that's what you are. And if you don't see yourself as that, then you don't see physics as a viable career path. And it's a serious concern in terms of, especially young women. Considering our path, we still have very few women in our discipline, and that's an issue for sure, and something that I'm super passionate about, and I really like to work on in so many different ways at the university, but also through Royal City Science.
So when you want to encourage people to have, like, to see physicists as not just Sheldon Cooper, by the way, full disclosure, I friggin' hate that guy. I think of scientists there was a documentary that came out a number of years ago, and it was called The Universe. And there was a Japanese man, and I think his name was Kiku or something. I can't pronounce his name.
Yeah. I know who you mean. I can't remember. I can't think of what. Yes, I know who you mean. Yeah.
And I thought how he was fun and upbeat. And then he showed some of the radio astronomers who were all young women. And these were the people that were discovering exoplanets. They were discovering all these other things, like stuff like, to me, physics is an unbelievable amount of math that I will never understand. In fact, the joke at my college was, broadcasters don't do math. That's why you talk. And it always astounds me just to see the level of, you said genius, and I can't deny that. You guys have an unbelievable intellect, and it applies in so many different ways to how we live our everyday life, like the physics of how does a seatbelt work? That thing saves your life. Right. For example, I am a amputee, so I use a mobility device there has to be physics and engineering that go behind designing my wheelchair to make sure it has to work the way it works.
Yeah.
And I think that's astounding, just seeing how science is all around us and we just assume it just magically happens.
Yeah.
So I guess my question here is, now that I've kind of rambled on for a second here, is how do you encourage people to really explore that sense of wonder, to really want to do something more, to be involved in, I guess, making a different future? Because we all had that image of living in the 21st century with the flying car. Obviously, we're not there yet, but how do you encourage the scientists of the future to really explore their potential?
Yeah, I think the most important thing is just to allow yourself to let your curiosity take you places, and not be afraid to explore. Things aren't going to work out. You're going to fail at something, but when we fail at something, that's when we often learn the most. And so I think just being allowed to explore things and follow what you're interested in, and don't be so worried about where is this going, what kind of job am I going to get. And I know that sounds like easy to do, but really not. But I think that's the most important thing. I have a daughter who's 17. She's just finishing grade 11. She has absolutely no idea what she wants to do, what she wants to be. But that's the way it should be. She's only 17. And there's so much pressure on kids to think that they're supposed to have it all mapped out. But honestly, just follow what you're interested in and see where it takes you. And the sky's the limit. And I think it's just we have too many pressures put on us that we think we're supposed to be one thing or another. And I just wish that we could allow creativity and exploration to be, valued and nurtured and fostered a little bit more than we do.
100%. I mean, like I said, I'm a big supporter of STEAM. My wife is a teacher with a background in geography. And I always wondered, well, why geography of all things? It's just, we know what the planet looks like. And then I realized what a remarkably ignorant statement that was that I just said. And it really made me really grasp the wonder and really start to respect, more so than I already did, all levels of scientists. And it's encouraging to see more young people get involved, start to figure things out. But as you mentioned, un not be restrained by expectations of, oh man, I need to do X job. And I really hope more people take that to heart as they start to explore post-secondary options when they choose to go. I mean, I didn't go to college till I was in my mid-20s because I needed that time to explore who I was. And then when I found broadcasting, even I found science there. I found the science of sound, the science of acoustics, and how all that applies to making a beautiful piece of music or even a well composed radio broadcast. There's so much stuff that goes into that. And I even toyed with the idea of maybe I like the idea of working at a radio station as an engineer because I
Right.
like fixing things. And I think that's a really wonderful message that you have to really encourage that. And I really hope Royal City Science, as it goes, because believe me, I want this to happen so much for Guelph, that really encourages the next generation of children to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I won't walk on the moon, but maybe I'll do something else cool.
For
And
sure.
I think that's something kind of beautiful for kids to take in, especially now that, the world is starting to get back to normal-ish. And I use that phrase remarkably lightly, knock on wood.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'm really grateful for organizations like yours encouraging young minds and also inviting people like myself who are older to not be afraid to learn again. And
For sure.
I really hope I get a chance to come out to one of these things in the near future. So if people want to find out more about your organization, where would they have to go?
Yeah, so our website is royalcityscience.ca. We're also on Twitter at Royal City Sci, and we're on Instagram at Royal City Science.
Fantastic. So, Joanne, I got to thank you tremendously for spending some time with us here at This Week in Geek. I assure you, we will definitely be crossing paths again. And if I get a chance to volunteer with your organization, I definitely will.
Awesome. The more the merrier. Thanks so much, Mike.
Anytime. All right, guys. So that was my interview with Joanne O'Meara. She's one of the co-founders of Royal City Science. So like I said, guys, if you want to find out more about this or organization, go check it out. And while this may not apply to your city specifically, go check out the local science centers that are in your cities. These places need our support. If you have children in your family, encourage them. There is nothing wrong with that. It doesn't always have to be a 9 to 5 grind. You can encourage these kids to do something wonderful. And even if they don't want to pursue something, that's fine too. And just explore, I think, is what I took away from this. And don't be afraid. So guys, until next time, I will sure Alex will be in charge of the show until when I come back in August. So hopefully you guys are having a safe and happy spring/summer, and I will be talking to you guys real soon. So until next time, folks, I have been your host, Mike the Birdman, saying until next time, be excellent to each other. We'll catch you guys again next time right here on ThisWeekInGeek.net.
At no point in your rambling, incoherent response were you even close to anything that could be considered a rational thought.
Thanks for listening to this episode of This Week in Geek. Hungry for more? Check out our website at ThisWeekInGeek.net. You can subscribe to the podcast, browse our Twitter and Instagram, and leave your thoughts on today's topics. If you'd like to give us some feedback, send us an email at feedback@ThisWeekInGeek.net. Tune in next time, and remember,
lower your shields and surrender your listenership.
We would be honored if you would join us.
Thank you for your cooperation. Good night.